Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back. At this point, it's our custom to introduce ourselves. I told you that my name is Henry.
I'm Kay.
Josh.
My name is Steve. Michael.
Clayton.
Kevin.
Grisha.
Michael.
David.
Matthew.
Stephen.
Mark.
Jerry. Jim.
Bob.
Tony.
I'm Richard.
Andrew.
Bob.
Bill.
Jack.
My name is Cass.
Thank you. Welcome all. And online, I can tell you that I see Ed, Daniel, Ian, Marvin, Steve, Daniel, John E., Owen, Jeff, Joe, Don, Frisco Wolf, Andy, Jeffrey Barrett, Gittis. So, here we are. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Ian Challis. Ian is a student and teacher in the Insight tradition of Buddhism. He's a teacher, founding member, and past guiding teacher of the Insight community of the desert in Palm Springs. Aya Hema, Lee Braslington, Narayan Liebenson, Larry Yang, and Arena Weissman are key teachers who have inspired and illuminated his practice. Serving queer community is a passion. 2025 marks his co-teaching of the 9th annual queer retreat at Dhamma Dana Retreat Center with Leslie Booker. He is also a qualified teacher of MBSR, a graduate of Spirit Rock's Community Dharma Leader Teacher Training, and was formally invited by Arena Weissman to teach in the lineage of Uba Khin and Ruth Dennison. You can find him at ianchallis.com. But you can also find him here and now. You're on, Ian.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much, Henry. And thanks for inviting me. And thanks for being here today. It's lovely to see the room and see the faces on Zoom and to feel the welcome of this community. And it's been a pleasure over the years to have been with you and be invited back. And I'm so very grateful for Sangha right now and the possibility of practicing in community. And more than ever, Sangha is the foundation or one of the foundations of my practice and path. And I really need the balance and the connection right now. I need these reminders of what's truly important, and this felt reminder that we get when we come together as a community, online and in person, that we aren't alone and that we aren't alone in our practice. And I just want to acknowledge the incredible efforts that it takes to create Sangha. And Gay Buddhist Fellowship, I know, has been, it's decades of efforts and love and care and connection that make it possible for us all to be meeting here today. So just wanting to really appreciate all the efforts, the organizers' efforts, and the people who support it financially, and folks showing up to support it with their presence and their practice, and just how rare and needed that is in the world right now. You know, with everything that's going on, and just even being a human being, and particularly right now in this world, why would we ever think that we could just go it alone? And I used to think that I could. I was sort of, when I started my practice, I was kind of one of those, just give me a book and a cushion and I'll try and get it figured out and I'll see you, after enlightenment. And now I know that that's not enough. That's not enough for the spiritual path. The shine of the gem of Sangha is that we share the work, share the courage, share space, share intentions for healing, well-being, for inclusion, and we remind each other of the path and the possibility of walking it. So when Jeff and Christian invited me to offer these 2 weeks, there was an invitation to make it a 2-part reflection. And as last year unfolded with all the confusion and despair surrounding it, and as that continues, that confusion and despair deepens this year, I've been working with keeping my Dharma view and practice as uncomplicated and essential as I possibly can. And so I'm practicing with something very basic, where to find ground, where to find a path in this world. And so today I want to explore the beginning and the goal of finding our ground in the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path. Where, why, how we begin, and where the path leads. The path from samsara to nibbana, from eternal wandering and hunger to a place of stillness, where desire and aversion are stilled. So samsara, the why of our practice this week, and nibbana, where the practice leads next week. Dukkha and the end of dukkha, which may be familiar to you as the Buddha's reason for teaching. I love that he was so clear. He said, I know all kinds of things, but I'm interested in teaching suffering and the end of suffering. That was his specialty. Not how to be beloved or powerful or in control, but how suffering happens and how freedom is possible. And importantly, how it is that we do this for ourselves. So I love snorkeling. And I don't get to do it very often, but when I do, I just really, really love it. It feels so meditative. It's quiet under the water. It's focused. It's intimate. You see things in new ways. And one day, probably about 20 years ago, I was snorkeling in a beautiful bay in Hawaii, and I was near the mouth of the bay as the tide was going out. And it was really rough water, and it started to rain pretty heavily, getting windier, and the water was stirred up, and the tide was pulling me out and then pushing me back in. And even with flippers and being 20 years younger than I am now, I wasn't able to resist the current. And I was worried because I was beginning to get a little exhausted, and I could see I was really close to sharp rocks that were covered with barnacles, and that was not going to be comfortable. And seawater was splashing in top of my snorkel, and I could feel panic rising, and that feeling of losing control, that the conditions were stronger than my ability to resist them. And then the thought just came to me, put your feet down. Oh, yeah, put your feet down. And the water was just the right depth so that I could stand and I could regain some balance, calm myself, look around and figure out what I needed to do to get to safety. My perspective and my grounding just changed in an instant. Just put your feet down. And so for me, that's a good image of what samsara feels like. Samsara is that feeling of being pulled and pushed and dragged, exhausted. And so the Buddha's path begins when we recognize what's happening and we say, I'm just going to put my feet down. I'm going to reclaim my ground. And this word, samsara, it literally means wandering on and on, never really getting anywhere, almost like walking in circles. And sometimes it's described as a wheel, the wheel of samsara, the spinning that keeps us moving from life to life, episode to episode, never satisfied, never truly at ease. I sometimes think of it as like a wheel that's fallen off of a child's wagon or something like that, and you can imagine that you could hold it up by the axle and start spinning the wheel. And as you start spinning it, you can imagine if you are located out here on the edge of the wheel, that there's a lot of movement. And as you move closer to the center of the wheel, there's less and less movement. The circles are smaller until you come to the very center and there's almost no movement. That's the journey from samsara to nibbana. That's the journey, well, it's not the exact journey, but it's an analogy for the journey that the Buddha is inviting us to take. And this is an invitation that stretches over lifetimes, according to the Buddhist teachings. And it's also a journey that we take in this lifetime, in this day, in this hour, maybe even in this moment. It's a journey that we can remember that even as there's all this motion and movement on the edge of the wheel, there is at the same time this still point, and that we have access to it. So all the teachings of the Buddha lead from samsara to nibbana. And of course, these aren't physical locations. They are experiences, ways of relating. Samsara, the experience of being entangled, caught up in the endless pursuit of sensual pleasure, and the self that we create around that endless thirst. And then nibbana, this complete freedom from craving and aversion, the loosening of self that's built around it. So I wanted to offer one of the Buddha's teachings on samsara, and there are many. This one is from the Samyutta Nikaya, and it's called Tears. And the Buddha is speaking to the monastics and says, this samsara has no known beginning. No first point is found of samsara, of sentient beings roaming and transmigrating, shrouded by ignorance and fettered by craving. The flow of tears you've shed while roaming and transmigrating is indeed more than the water in the four oceans. For a long time, you've undergone the death of a mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter, loss of relatives, loss of wealth, or loss through illness, from being coupled with the unloved and separated from the loved. The flow of tears you've shed while roaming and transmigrating is indeed more than the water in the four oceans. And he says, this is quite enough for you to become disillusioned, dispassionate, and freed regarding all conditions. And the Buddha is not trying to depress us. He's trying to wake us up. He's saying if we don't understand samsara, we will keep trying to ease our suffering through the very strategies that produce suffering. And he names that root, shrouded by ignorance, fettered by craving. Not evil, not sin, not something like that. Just not seeing clearly and being pulled and pushed, fettered. And when ignorance and craving are running the show, the wheel turns and turns and turns. So if that's a little about, what samsara is, how does it get fed? Because it's not just suffering. It's suffering that keeps renewing itself. It has fuel. So one place is in the culture. We live in a culture that encourages and supports samsara, this endless, thirsty wandering. A culture that tells us that real safety or peace or well-being can be bought or won or stolen. That if and when we get what we want, then everything will be okay. If only I had that job, that partner, that money, that body, that recognition, that control. If only. Or if only I didn't have. And there are those moments where it may feel like we've gotten it, that if only prize. And there's a tiny cessation of wanting, and that something will immediately take its place. We go right down the list to the next thing, because the craving is unending. And we see this written so big and so large in the world and in this country, particularly right now, that the most inconceivably rich people are not satisfied. That the most powerful feel unsafe and lust for more power. And it was the same in the Buddha's day. Different costumes, different names, but the craving doesn't change. What is the end point? When is it ever enough? Moving in the direction that samsara pulls us never brings peace. Instead, it brings anxiety, fear of loss, us and them thinking, and all the fear and hatred in the world. And the path, the spiritual path, isn't about pretending that this isn't happening or happening in our own minds and bodies, or thinking, it's always been this way and so there's nothing to be done, or that our resistance and protest aren't important acts of compassion. And samsara is not something only out there. Because when the Buddha names the root poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, he isn't naming individuals, he is naming energies. Greed is greed. In a person, in a multinational corporation, in a country. Hatred is hatred. In Reddit or X or something, or codified in government policies, or in my own thoughts. Delusion is delusion. If it's propaganda, denial, lies, or the trance that says this is normal. So we name the fires, we name the energies, and we practice so that we don't reproduce them through how we act, the actions of body, speech, and mind. We can stop feeding the energy of samsara. And that's a tricky thing. As the Buddha said, the world is led by craving. The foolish are swept away by that current. But the wise, seeing the danger, travel against the current and reach the farther shore. That phrase, swept away by that current, that's samsara. And he's saying the current is strong. So how do we resist its pull? We take refuge and we practice. We recognize that we are not stuck, we're not trapped. We have a choice in how we relate. And what do we do when that's clear to us? So Ajahn Chah, the amazing Thai forest master who trained so many wonderful teachers who are teaching now, used to ask prospective students, have you had enough? Meaning, have you had enough of samsara? Have you had enough of chasing after and being chased by sensual pleasures? Have you had enough struggle with the way things are? Are you ready to let it all go? Are you ready to begin? To put your feet down and to move in the direction that leads away from samsara? Are you ready to travel the path? And there's nothing wrong with the pleasure of the senses. That's not the message at all. There's nothing wrong with the touch of a loved one, a shared meal, beautiful music, the way the light hits the water in the morning. These delights are not problems. What's not helpful is when we act as though sense pleasures should or could somehow be permanent, that we should be able to possess them, hold on to them, own them. The problem is clinging and pushing away. If I can just make this stay, I'll be okay. Or if I can just get rid of that. Because there will never be that moment of complete or lasting ease with the way things are. And part of samsara is that we don't see the deeper happiness that's available to us. The subtle, lasting happiness of letting go, of generosity, of stillness. The kind of happiness that isn't dependent on the next thing we get, or the next hit of reassurance, or the next victory. And when we don't see these forces and how they perpetuate, it's not just we who suffer, we pass that suffering along. And I was in a conversation last weekend with some new friends, and the thought of how patterns of behavior that are rooted in intergenerational trauma get passed down and reenacted came up. And how when we see those patterns clearly and see where they're rooted and the harms that they create and how they were passed forward, something wakes up in us. When we see it clearly, we know and we resolve, I'm not going to perpetuate this. This stops with me. This is the natural movement of the heart when it sees clearly. So the energy of that pattern might still be alive in me. It may not be processed fully. It may never be fully released in this life. But as a caring person, I'm going to do everything I can not to pass on that suffering and that pain. Our compassion arises and we say, no, it's enough. This may be my experience. I may still feel the effects of it, but I also see the mechanisms of it. And I want to suggest there's also a deep vulnerability simply being born into a fragile human body and a human life. And that this vulnerability results in patterns that we also don't have to perpetuate. So the patterns that might work for a physical organism intent on self-survival, this collection of what the Buddha called the aggregates that create a physical being, an organism, don't necessarily work for our hearts. They're not a source of lasting peace. So one of my teachers, Lee Brasington, who Henry mentioned, describes the human imperative as seek pleasure, avoid pain, live forever. And when that imperative is unconscious, when it's running the show, it keeps us trapped in samsara. And once we see that we're treating the world and other people in it as resources for our survival, our pleasure, or as competing adversaries, as separate, we're waking up to the patterns of samsara that keeps us hooked. And it's like those family patterns that when we see them clearly, the heart rises and looks for the way out. What is this life like when I wake up to samsara and this engine of craving, and I resolve I'm not unconsciously passing this on anymore to myself, my loved ones, or to the world? And this is called samvega. When we see samsara clearly, something powerful arises in the heart, spiritual urgency, samvega. When we know, and we know that the only way to peace is practicing the path. So this is like when the tide was pushing and pulling me, and I knew I had to do something else. I had to find solid ground. And so Ajahn Chah's question becomes very alive. Have you had enough? Have you had enough of being swept this way and that? Are you ready to begin? And that's the essential question. Are you ready to begin? Am I ready to begin? Seeing samsara is seeing dukkha, seeing the first noble truth. Seeing the cause of samsara, the craving and clinging, is the second noble truth. Knowing that peace is possible, cessation, it's the third noble truth. And the fourth noble truth is that there is the path, the Noble Eightfold Path that leads from samsara all the way to nibbana. A path from clinging to letting go, from greed to generosity, from aversion to equanimity, from hatred to love, from anxiety and fear to a peaceful heart. And this path begins with wise view. Wise view is the foundation and the goal of the path, the beginning and the end. Wisdom at the beginning and wisdom at the end. We have to have some wise view in order to begin the quest for freedom. We have to have some understanding or feeling of the human condition, of samsara, and our capacity for freedom. And all of us do have some wise view, or we wouldn't be here this morning. We wouldn't be practicing or drawing toward practice. And I'm talking about wise view now because it's a shift in view that brings freedom. Understanding samsara is wise view. It's a shift in view that leads us out of endless wandering and toward nibbana. Seeing what's keeping that wheel turning and seeing what leads towards release. And wise view isn't something that we get right once and then just keep forever. It's a practice, it's a process, or in relationship with it. And so part of what I've been doing this year is bringing greater awareness to the views that I hold. I've been asking myself, do my views support the next place on the path, which is wise thought, letting go, compassion, kindness? And if not, why am I holding on to this view? Is it possible to let go of now? So, sometimes in the beginning of the year we ask ourselves that question, what am I holding on to that I don't need anymore? So this isn't philosophy, it's an orientation to life. Samsara hides in views, opinions, and stories that become identity and proliferate like weeds, or that are so culturally entrenched that we just take them for granted. And the Buddha spoke of the thicket of views, and the image of the thicket is great, I think, because it sounds tangled, overgrown, a place you might easily get caught, a place that needs to be cleaned up. And the kind of views that he's talking about here are the kind of views and worldly opinions that we take for truth, that separate us from each other, that are unkind, divisive, deluded, unwise views, because they lead to becoming more entrapped, that come from a limited viewpoint of I, me, and mine, that organism that needs to survive, sense of separation or competition with others. So with views, as with so much in life, less is more. We have a superfluity of views. Why hold so many? And that's the question I've really been working with this year. Why hold so many? What would it be like to let go, to clear out the thicket? And which views are worth holding, keeping, nourishing? Which views are noble, right, wise, appropriate? And what would this year be like if I centered 4 or 5 views? And so I sat down and I really thought about the views that I hold and the views that I want to hold right now. And so for me, for right now, the 5 that feel most alive are, the first is I trust the Dharma. I trust the Dharma, that the teachings help reduce suffering for myself and for others, and that they lead toward freedom. And the second is that I trust myself enough to walk this path. I can do this step by step, even imperfectly, even if it takes a long time. I trust that I don't walk this path alone, that I'm supported by teachers and friends and Sangha and countless conditions. And I believe that every human being is worthy of kindness and safety, including myself, including the people I don't like so much, even when it's hard to feel that. And I trust that my own actions actually matter, that they matter, that what I do can support well-being in the world. So I'll let you know, but that's the question for me. What is it? What would this year be like if it's just those 5 views, based on the teachings and felt in my heart? And what if I committed to those views and measure all the other views that come up against them? So you never finish what you start. Wait, I trust myself enough to walk this path. No one gets it. Wait, I don't walk this path alone. I know that. The world is hopeless. Wait, my actions matter, and the actions of all caring people matter. Oh, when I get carried away by fear, by bias, by opinion, outrage, the need to be right, when I get pulled away from center, the invitation is simple. Put your feet down. Because samsara, this wandering on, isn't something that just happens over lifetimes. It happens every day. It happens in the difficult conversation with a loved one. It happens when I identify and become obsessed by my cravings. It happens when I identify with my despair and rage. It happens when I believe that ease and well-being are out there and must be brought in. It happens when we forget, when we get swept up by the tides and poles of old conditioning. The wheel turning again and again and again by this momentum of if only, or not this, or I can't stand that, or I have to fix, or I have to win. Samsara tries to convince us that the only safety is in control, that the only power is force. And what the Buddha discovered and what we're here to remember together is that another way of being is possible, another way of relating. So we reclaim our ground again and again, not once and forever, but moment by moment. This is samsara, this is the current, this does not lead to freedom. Every time we remember, we return to center, a little bit closer to center. Every time that we return to center, the wheel loses momentum and we move toward freedom. So next week we'll talk more about the destination, the further shore, the change in view that is Nibbana, and how we move in that direction. But now I would like to just take a minute to allow some silence and stillness, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas and questions. Okay, thank you for your kind attention, and I would love to know anything this brings up for you, or your thoughts on samsara or view, or anything at all. So I'm not quite sure I remember the protocol for people raising their hands or whatever, but I'm sure you all know.
So anybody is welcome to speak up in the room, and online people can raise your Zoom hands. Bill?
If you don't mind, kind of go through the points again. The first being, I trust the Dharma. The second being, I trust myself to walk the path. The third being, you do it with others. The fourth being, others to their happiness and safety. And the fifth is the fifth.
The fifth is that our actions matter. That the actions that we take in the world really do matter and do have effect, positive effect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for talk. For those five, I noticed that you started them all off something like, I trust that. And I was curious kind of how you came upon that expression for this framework. Yeah, how you came upon that, or kind of the beginning and what that means.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that question. I was kind of reflecting on that a little too. Why did I say trust? I think it really has to do with faith. Faith is the first of the 5 spiritual powers in Buddhism, and we have to have some faith and in order to decide, I think I'm going to do this. It doesn't have to be complete faith, it doesn't have to be verified faith, but some faith. And so I think that's where, for me, the word trust is coming up. And at this point, after enough years of practice and trial and error and seeing what works and what doesn't work in my life, I feel like I can finally say, like, I trust the Dharma. I trust that these teachings lead in the direction of freedom and less suffering. And really important, is being able to say I trust myself to walk this path. Because that's not something I might have said 20 years ago, or even 2 years ago. But I can see that now, that I do trust myself. My steps aren't always, the right ones, the most skillful ones, but I trust that I can walk this path because I do also see the skillful movements and the places where I'm able to interrupt the current of samsara. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Please.
Hi, thank you, Enrique. Your commentary was really beautiful and gave me a lot to think about. I got lost, though, early on in the story of the tears, of the Buddha talking about like wandering in delusion and ignorance, and these like 4 oceans of tears. Because then it sounded like he gave examples like loss of loved ones, loss of illness, loss of wealth. That just sounded to me like oceans of grief, because they are painful. I mean, it didn't sound like false refuge or craving, and it sounded like these are oceans of tears from experiences of loss. And so I'm having a hard time sort of connecting are you ready to create this condition of delusion and ignorance with the examples of what to me sounds like just healthy grieving of loss? Does that make sense at all? And maybe there's more to the tears story, but like I'm still gonna cry if someone I love dies, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I wouldn't look at that as an delusion, and because my acceptance that we die is how I access to love too. I don't know, I'm going out for this tangent, but I think that I wasn't connecting the dots well with that story. And then your commentary loved it, but I lost the beginning of the story.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not able to hear every word. I think I'm getting the gist. So maybe we can kind of be in dialogue about this right now. So part of what I'm hearing is that the teaching on the oceans of tears from grief and loss don't really connect with the idea of samsara and craving. Is that part of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm getting from your that's not quite what you meant. So do you want to, can you just talk a little louder maybe, and so I could hear better?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to also move on the mic, so let me know. Is it any better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Yeah, and basically I think, yes, that like I didn't make the connection that the experiences of loss of loved ones, loss of health, etc., and oceans of tears around that was necessarily a strong connection, like you said, to examples of delusion and ignorance.
Yeah.
It could actually just be healthy grieving.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of waiting for like a story of examples of like addiction, craving, clinging, false refuge, not necessarily things that might just be grief loss.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's great feedback. And I hear that. I think that story is more of the kind of Ajahn Chah thing of like, have you had enough? Like it's fucking painful to be alive and to experience all the loss and grief that we experience as human beings. And let's do something different. Let's do things a different way. Let's shake it up. Let's look for joy and safety somewhere else because we're not finding it here. And that's not meant to negate like the love that we feel, because of course we do, and of course we're going to. But is there another way to relate to the ongoing pains of being human? And where is it that we're getting hooked by the currents of an organism being alive and feeling and caring? And is there another way of relating to what's here? Is there another way of relating to this life that isn't any less caring, but isn't so despairing and painful? Yeah. Does that help at all, or does that confuse things further?
No, I like it. I would also love a world where men cry more. So, because I think if those were 4 oceans with 4 male tears, we might be in a better world. I think the women have unfortunately cried more of those oceans. But
yeah.
So but I get now, I have a whole different appreciation for it based on what you just clarified. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. And I think that's so interesting too, because I think maybe part of what that's pointing to is like, the Buddha is saying, like, you have cried these tears, you may not be in touch with them, but you have, and you're going to keep crying these tears. And, you're right. The world would be a better place if men cried more, allowed themselves to cry and feel it.
Can I make a comment on that? The movie Hamlet, Hamlet?
I have not seen.
Bring pancakes. Lots of pancakes.
It's the solution. It's the dark.
It's an example.
Yeah.
It's an example. It's about the grief of Anne Hathaway when their son dies. She and William Shakespeare, when their son dies, and her grief. And the early part of it, I think, she feels she's alone. She feels that it's other people's fault. She feels that she doesn't, want to keep going. And that is an example, I think, of an overlay of mental trips. Samsara on the grief itself. How they can be there at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. The second arrow stuff, the getting hooked.
I have a question. Okay, this could be quick. You said faith is the first of 5 superpowers or something?
Yeah.
What are the other 4?
Okay. Faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom. Those are the 5. They're called the 5 faculties because we all have them, and we develop them in the path of practice. And once they're fully developed, in the classical teachings, then they become the 5 powers. Those are the 5.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ian. We look forward to seeing you in person next week.
Me too. Yeah.
Do we have any announcements now?
Well, I'm the host, and then we'll do. Yeah, please, just difference. Yeah. Okay, so welcome. Again, today there are some refreshments out there in the lobby area and tea, so you can continue this conversation. And then some people, around 12:30, decide to go out to brunch and sort of gather around the door. So you just go and join, see what group you want to hook up with there. Now, a little housekeeping. There's teacups. When you're finished with them, just put them in the sink. I'll deal with them. They're pretty easy. I also will be coming around with the Donna bowl. Donna is idealized view of giving. So it's giving not only the Sangha, but what supports our Sangha. It's this beautiful space that we rent. It is also about the newsletter that we come out with that is, I don't know, sent to incarcerated practitioners. Monthly, I think we are doing the Larkin Center still, which is supporting for a dinner each month for the youth. And of course, an honorary to our speakers. There is a newcomer's sign-up sheet near the credenza if you leave the room and talk to the right. If you wish, put your name down, your telephone number, if you want. And also, I think it was allows you to sign up for a newsletter, doesn't it? So I used to.
You can get on, or you get on the Google group that we have some community. I'm screwed up. Your email.
Right. And if I've forgotten anything.
Yes. Well, one of the things we do with Government is subsidize our retreats, which brings me to April 15th and 19th. We have having our spring retreat at Vajrapani, which is down here on Saltville, California, so in the Santa Cruz area. And Sean Oakesfeld will be our teacher. This is his third year. He's just the most articulate, wonderful teacher. So the registration will be opening soon, and we do offer scholarships, so don't let money impede your coming. And if you have any other questions, Matthew, would you raise your hand? Matthew and I can answer your questions. And if you're on the Google group, you'll see the announcement. We're working on, getting that up and so you can do the registration. So do consider coming. It's a fabulous retreat, beautiful space, and everyone who was there the last 2 times just raved about what a fabulous retreat it was. A commercial over, but you can find me having a time more.
Matthew.
Yes. So GBF is, I guess, compared to other sanghas, rather maybe a little bit more informal. And what's come up in the board meeting is that we don't want to lose sight of some of the devotional practices that ground a Buddhist community. One of them being that when we enter this room, the meditation hall, we maintain silence. This space is different from the social space outside those doors. So especially since there are a number of regulars here today, we'd like to get back into the habit of maintaining that practice of silence when we enter this space, this sacred space.
And I have one announcement. Thank you. I have one announcement, which is we also have a Wednesday evening sangha. Some of us meet on Zoom every Wednesday at 7:30 to 9. We meditate for half an hour. We share our status of the week, and we informally have been reading our way through various books, but you don't have to read the book to come. So right now we're between books. So come check it out. It does form a very helpful support group for those who choose to come on Wednesday evenings. So
It's the same link of the Sunday song.
Yes, the link is on the website. So, any other announcements? Let's stand up and we will do a dedication of merit. By the power and the truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.